Hello, my name is James Berry and I'm a helicopter pilot and instructor working in the UK. And if you've been following along with my latest series, there's 7 steps on how to become a professional helicopter pilot. We are on step 7, the career path, and we're in fact on the last part of step 7, the immediate commercial work. So what is this step and who's it for? This pathway is if you have limited funds or you just want to get stuck right in immediately, working with your CPL, getting back out there. So what does this involve? It involves tasking yourself out on local sightseeing tours, pleasure flights, or light single engine charter work. This can eventually lead on to VIP charter work or SPO utility flying, although this is not the only way with which to get there. This is not the easiest path to go down, but I'm going to drill into why that is and try and help you mitigate some of the factors that make it difficult as part of this video. There are a few general requirements to undertake this path, and some of them can be more efficiently taken care of as part of your hour building. So these are things like R44 or Bell 206 type ratings and getting the requisite hours required, as some operators impose insurance/company limits. For example, they might require 25 hours of flight in a 206 in order to then operate it commercially for them. So you need to do your homework and find out what these limits are, and then you can efficiently build yourself up for it. Bear in mind, if you are over the age of 60, you cannot take part in single pilot commercial air transport work. So if this is you, then this is not the pathway for you, since that's what most of the early work entails. I'm going to dive into some of the really specific sort of pre-working, pre-company requirements with you now. I'm just going to go through them. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the Operator's Proficiency Check, or OPC. This will take about a 0.7 to an hour in the aircraft that you want to work on commercially, be that the 206 or the 44, etc. It's not too dissimilar to a normal proficiency check involving emergency procedures and that sort of thing, but it is specific to the company. They're required for working commercially, and they're required every 6 months for working with commercial air transport. Unfortunately, this is one of the things that companies often, if they're taking on a new low-time pilot, will ask for them to pay for initially. The first one. Subsequent are usually covered. The second point is the line training and check. This is again company specific. We're looking at 1 to maybe up to 3 hours in the aircraft. This is training and then a check on the job specific qualities. Okay, so be this tours, you'd be trained how to do tours. If it was like an inspection of power lines, you'd be trained how to do that. It's specific to the kind of airborne role you're going to then go and do. Again, new pilots often asked to pay for this initially, the first one, and then it is every year from then. You'll need to do some ground-based training as well, an initial CRM or crew resource management. This is actually really interesting. It drills into the human factors which overwhelmingly are cited as the causes of incidents and accidents in aircraft reports today. It will drill down to stuff like surprise and startle effect and how to try and prepare yourself for many things. It's a huge breadth of subject, really interesting. Dangerous goods and fire and first aid courses are also required, and there may be some more. You can find these ground-based courses for an average of about £90 each online. However, I would heavily recommend that you speak to the people that you're going to be working with, because they may have their own in-house providers or preferred methods of delivering this training to you, and you should try and adhere to that for the organisation you'd like to work with. All in all, I suspect that, and this is a rough estimate in November of 2025, that the cost of all of this onboarding is going to be somewhere between £1,500 and £2,500. To talk more about this pathway, I had the pleasure to talk to a friend of mine, James Macnamara, who recently completed his training with EBG Helicopters and is now currently a working commercial pilot. Please take it away, James.
Hi, my name is James Macnamara and I am a commercial helicopter pilot. I got my commercial license in May of this year, 2025, and I landed my first job the following September. Part of that time was because there was a longer than usual onboarding process. As of recording this video, I have been a commercial pilot for 1 whole month. I fly on an ad hoc basis with the company that I did all of my flight training with. I feel that I took quite a traditional route in getting my first job. I knew that the company most likely to hire me would be the one that I have a history with and that knows me quite well. I was very clear from the outset with my flight school that I intended to go all the way to commercial. And as such, I treated every single lesson as if it was an interview. I made sure I wasn't late, or as reasonable as possible. Arrived early, made sure I was presentable, and that I approached the whole process of learning to fly very seriously, and really communicated with my instructor that I wanted to go the whole way. For people that aren't looking to go this route, another popular one is to go directly into the North Sea. There were quite a few cadet positions advertised last year, and I know that a few people did manage to go straight into co-pilot seats up in the North Sea, and they had their type ratings, instrument ratings, and all that included. So it was definitely a very sought after path into the career. So if you are in a position to apply for these schemes, if they come up again and you have the ability to move to Scotland for the role, it's certainly something to consider. Working in the North Sea reportedly is very tough though. Everyone that I spoke to really said that moving up to Scotland and the type of flying that you're doing, it certainly isn't for everyone. So be sure that you really do your homework and you find out what the role really requires. In terms of cost, the cost for me ended up being a lot higher than I had originally planned for. All in all, it came to about just under £90,000 to get to where I am now. This is probably higher than some of the figures that you might have seen in your research so far. You need to account for the fact that you need to fly for about 200 hours and you will be paying for all of those hours. Then on top of that, there are landing fees, there's the exam fees, your medicals, the study platforms that you will need in order to pass the exams. There's also all the time off and the travel to and from the airfield. So, really do sit down and have a large buffer for what you are planning, what you think it might come to, and, realistically what it's going to be. The best part of being a helicopter pilot, it's certainly not the money to start out with, but I think if you really want to be a helicopter pilot, then the money at the beginning won't be an issue. If you are after a higher salary, then fixed wing is the obvious route to go. But if you really have the bug, if you have to fly, you can't imagine yourself doing anything else, then all of those hurdles, all of the difficulties in getting into it, they'll all be worth it. I just can't describe how amazing it feels to fly these incredible machines and know that that's what you're doing for a living. It makes it all worth it. In terms of advice to someone, I got some good advice when I first started out. One was do an intro flight first. Make sure that you know this is really for you. I remember vividly the first time I went up in the helicopter, and I just, that was game over really. I knew I couldn't do anything else. So do the intro flight first. Then make sure that you go and get your first class medical. You don't need your first class medical to start off with, but you will need it in order to get a commercial license. So I wanted to make sure that I could get that first class medical rather than, invest all this money, get to this point, and then find out that there's some sort of condition or factor that would stop me right at the end. So you don't have to keep your first class medical current the whole way through your training. I got my first class initial, let it lapse whilst I was doing it, and then redid my first class again when it was time to do the commercial course. Another piece of advice is that it's a small industry. Most helicopter pilots know each other, so don't be an arse. Be professional, put your best foot forwards, especially whilst you're training. And, the place where you do all your training is most likely going to be the first place you go to when you interview for the job, when you finally make it. So, always be very mindful of that. Another sort of aspect which is important to really make sure you can make it is if you have another job that you can do concurrently with your training and during the early parts of the career, because there's no way I could live on the current earnings I get from flying alone. So the fact that I'm able to carry on with my other job, it's flexible enough that I can go flying when the opportunities come up, but I can sustain myself and support my family solely on that income and not rely on the income from flying. And having that freedom to then be able to take the flying as it comes just means you're a lot more likely to be able to get through this really sort of difficult patch right at the beginning. There are some huge hurdles in becoming a helicopter pilot, but it just means that when you do finally make it and you get the license, it means you've really achieved something. You've achieved something that most other people would only even dream of trying. So you can be really proud of that. And then just the feeling of looking out of the cockpit and knowing that this is my office now. It makes all of the hard work that you put in to get to that point just absolutely worth it, and I can't recommend it more. Thanks.
James, thank you so much for sharing your perspective with us. I need to stress that if this is your plan from the start, you must lay the groundwork and collect the contacts you will require post-training. It's very easy to fall off the radar at this point if you miss this, if you don't network. It's heartbreaking. People focus so hard, understandably, because you're spending a fortune on it, to finish the training and get themselves to a high standard. However, if you don't have contacts at this point, and if you haven't laid the groundwork for your work post CPL, I've seen it happen many times. People just stop flying at this point. They seem to run out of energy and steam, and then they become non-current, and the longer that gap goes on, the more difficult it gets to break into the industry. So I'm going to stress this many times. You must decide early on if this is what you want to do, and you must network. This means going and talking to many different schools and organisations. Make contacts, make friends with them, let them know that you're there, let them know when your training is going to finish. If they are a training organisation that also does charter work and pleasure flights, attach yourself to that organisation, train with them and talk to them. Say, under the proviso, I will train with you if you can give me some work once I finish. That's what James did. He trained with EBG and then he started working with them once he finished, because he made those contacts, he made those agreements, he had those conversations. Tell people it's what you want to do, and then ask them how they can help you do it and how you can help them. There is also the timing issue. So just getting the work is not enough. There'll be the timing issue. If you finish your training in March or April, great. You've got the whole season ahead of you. Typically, helicopter pilots, it is a seasonal job. We are busier through the spring, summer, and then it kind of winds down through autumn, and it can, to some extent, grind to a halt in the winter. So bear in mind that you're going to have this seasonal workflow, and you need to prepare for that. It can be a bit feast or famine. As James says, it's best in the beginning, and I know you don't want to hear this, especially after all the investment you've made in yourself, if you don't have to rely on flying as your sole source of income. If you have another job that has the flexibility for you to fly around it, because the work, it can be sporadic and it can also be all over the country. It can require driving to different places to fly a couple of hours here and there, but getting your foot in the door and starting, that's the most difficult point. It gets easier as you go on and you gain experience. To summarize, the absolute key is network, network, network. Do it early and be thorough. You may also hear, this is a little bit of a sidebar, of these private owner jobs where people who own machines will then take on a pilot who flies them around personally. In order to do this, you'd have to know like an aviation enthusiastic rich benefactor who has their own machine. This is not common. It's quite niche. And if you are in that situation where you do know this person, you're probably not watching a video about tips on how to break into the industry. But this may be a subject that I'll talk about more at a later time, if that's something people would like to know about. Just one last thing to have in mind before we wrap up is that as an alternative to UK-based commercial flying, you could try and take your skills overseas. I understand that getting your foot in the door is not easy, and it's not getting any easier, but it is possible to build your experience overseas and then bring the hours back here and then get yourself into a more permanent position in the UK. Some people decide to head to places like South Africa or Botswana. They're internationally recognised. You can get yourself like a bush flying job where you can build really great experience in incredible scenery, but the pay is abysmal. I know that it's very, very small. It's a very small amount to get per month. I've also heard of pilots going as part of their hour building and doing their commercial pilot's licenses in Canada and then flying a little bit out there. You can do it as part of your hour building. I need to, if you want to know more about this, I need to do more research, and I can do a video on this topic. I just know this is something that people do. Lastly, thank you for watching. This is the end of the series of 7 steps. If you haven't seen the other career paths or the previous videos in this series, please go and check them out. Let me know what you think. I love it when you engage with me, you ask me questions. Tell me if there are things you want me to research and give my perspective on. Helps me learn as well, and when you engage with me, it lets me know why I'm doing this and putting these videos together. Look after yourselves, and next time I'll see you for something new. Bye bye.